The night sky above the alien world was not silent. Flashes of light tore across the heavens, like scars across the dark. The human stood on a rocky ridge, his boots heavy with dust, his breath sharp in the cold air. He had come here as a worker, nothing more, fixing broken machines in the ruins of an old colony. But tonight the air was different, heavy with fear. From the great warship floating in orbit, a sound ripped through the silence. The ship's lower decks glowed bright like a burning star. Then, without warning, something broke free. The human narrowed his eyes, watching as a glowing figure fell from the ship, cutting through the clouds like fire from the gods. Around him, alien villagers cried out, their voices full of terror. The princess has been thrown, they shouted in their strange tongue. Even without knowing their words, the human understood. The falling figure was no piece of metal, no burning wreck. It was alive. The flames licked around a small body, silver fabric shredded by the wind. A crown shimmered faintly before vanishing in the clouds. The human's heart pounded hard in his chest. He had seen many strange things in his years among the stars, but never this. A royal life cast away like trash, falling to the dirt below. The villagers scattered, pulling their children close. No one dared to run forward. They knew the punishment for helping one marked for death. The soldiers in the skies would burn entire families for it. But the human did not move back. Something inside him screamed that this moment was different, that if he turned away, he would never forgive himself. He ran. His boots struck the jagged rocks, sliding down toward the valley floor. The burning figure grew closer, spinning as smoke trailed across the night. Every step felt heavier, but he pushed on, his lungs burning. The ground shook as fragments of fire fell around him, each one exploding like thunder. Still he did not stop. He could see her now, a young alien girl, no older than 20, her face pale and terrified even in the blur of speed. Her eyes glowed faintly, wide with fear. Her long silver hair streamed behind her like a comet's tail. She reached out weakly as if begging the stars to hold her. And the human thought, if no one will catch her, then I must. He leapt from the last ridge, arms open. The force of her falling body struck him like a storm. The air left his lungs, his bones screamed in pain. He rolled across the hard ground, shielding her with his body. Dust and fire filled the valley as they skidded to a stop. Silence followed, heavy and unreal. The human lay on the ground, his chest aching, his vision blurred. In his arms, the alien princess was still alive. Her body trembled, her lips parted as she gasped for breath. She looked at him with wide eyes, glowing with shock. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The villagers who had run now stood frozen. Whispers filled the air. A human caught her, a human dared. Fear mixed with awe in their voices. Above, the warship rumbled, its lights shifting as though it had seen what had happened. The human knew soldiers would come. He knew death was close. But as he looked at the fragile princess in his arms, he also knew something greater had begun. He pushed himself to his knees, ignoring the pain. The princess whispered something in her language, her voice broken but soft. He did not understand the words, but he felt the meaning, gratitude, fear, and hope. And in that moment he swore to himself. He would not let her fall again. Not while he still breathed. The ground shook as engines roared above. Lights cut through the night, searching, hunting. The human lifted the princess in his arms, his jaw set. He did not know where he would run, or how long he could fight. But the choice had already been made. One human had saved the alien princess, and the galaxy would never forget it. The valley lay silent for only a moment. The human still held the alien princess in his arms, her breath shallow but steady. Around them the villagers whispered, afraid to move closer. They knew the punishment for even looking like helpers. The great warship above shifted in the sky, its engines roaring like thunder across the mountains. Searchlights tore through the clouds, long beams cutting across the rocks. The human knew his time was short. He pushed himself up, every muscle aching from the fall. The princess stirred in his arms, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light. Her eyes opened halfway, and she looked at him with confusion and fear. She spoke in her language, her words soft and broken. He did not understand, but he could hear one thing clear in her trembling tone. She was asking why he had saved her. There was no time to answer. Engines roared closer, and shadows appeared at the edge of the valley. Alien soldiers in black armor, their rifles glowing with blue light. Their voices rang out, cold and commanding. "Step away, human. Leave her. She is condemned." The human tightened his grip on the princess, his jaw hardening. He did not know why he was risking his life for her, but he knew turning back was no longer an option. With a burst of strength, he ran into the ruins nearby. Old stone arches rose from the earth, half buried in dust, the remains of an ancient alien city. The soldiers opened fire, beams of blue light striking the ground behind him, exploding stone into shards. The human ducked behind a fallen pillar, pressing the princess close, his heart pounding. The villagers screamed and fled into the hills, not daring to look back. The princess gasped as another blast shook the ruins. She whispered weakly, pointing toward the deeper shadows of the old city. Her voice broke, but carried meaning. She wanted him to go deeper, away from the soldiers. The human nodded and carried her through broken archways, past crumbling statues of forgotten kings. Every step was heavy, his legs burning, his breath rough. But her life in his arms gave him strength. The soldiers spread out behind them, their footsteps echoing against stone. "Find them. Kill the human. The princess must not survive," one shouted. The human slipped into an underground passage, the air damp and cold. He pressed his back to the wall, holding the princess close as the sound of boots thundered above. For a moment, silence returned, broken only by her soft breathing. She looked at him again, her glowing eyes filled with something new, trust. But the quiet did not last. A strange growl echoed through the dark, low and dangerous. From the shadows crawled alien beasts, their bodies covered in sharp spines, their eyes glowing red. The human froze, his grip tightening on the princess. The soldiers above were not the only danger. The ruins were alive with creatures long forgotten by the galaxy. He shifted his stance, keeping her behind him. The beasts hissed, circling closer, smelling weakness, smelling fear. The princess whispered again, her voice urgent. She reached toward a broken pendant around her neck, glowing faintly with blue light. She pressed it into his hand, nodding firmly. He did not know its power, but he knew she was telling him, "Use this." He raised it as the first beast leapt. The pendant burst with blinding light, flooding the chamber. The creatures shrieked and pulled back, their eyes burning in the glow. For the first time, the human felt the weight of destiny. The noise carried upward, and the soldiers above shouted in confusion. The human wasted no time, running deeper into the passage while the beasts scattered into the shadows. The princess held tightly to him now, her voice shaking but determined. Her words were a mix of gratitude and warning. He could not understand her tongue, but he understood her eyes. She was not just a helpless girl. She was a key to something far greater, and he had placed himself between her and death. As the ruins grew darker, the ground sloped downward into a hidden cavern. Blue crystals glowed faintly in the walls, lighting their way. The human placed her gently against a stone bench, catching his breath. She studied him, her eyes full of questions. Why would a human, an outsider hated by her people, risk everything to save her? He had no answer, not even for himself. But deep in his chest he knew one truth. This was only the beginning, and every soldier, every beast, every shadow of the galaxy would soon know his choice. Above them, the warship thundered, searchlights blazing across the night. The soldiers shouted as they searched the ruins. But the human and the alien princess had slipped into the earth, two lives bound together by a single impossible moment. The chase had only just begun. The cavern was quiet, filled with the soft glow of crystals that hummed faintly like hidden stars. The human sat against the wall, his chest heavy from running, his arms trembling with exhaustion. The alien princess lay on a stone slab, her silver hair spread around her like a shining veil, her breath shallow but steadier than before. For the first time since he caught her, the human could truly see her face. She was young, her features delicate, her skin faintly glowing as if touched by starlight. Even in her weakened state, there was an aura around her, something more than royalty, something that felt ancient and powerful. He leaned closer, checking if she was still breathing. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly blue in the crystal light. She looked at him for a long moment, confusion and fear mixing with something softer. Her lips moved, whispering words in her language, words he could not understand. Still, he heard the tone, gentle, questioning, almost like gratitude. He shook his head slowly and replied in his own tongue. "You are safe. I will not let them take you." She could not understand his words, but she felt their meaning in his voice. The princess tried to sit up but winced in pain, clutching her side. He reached out, steadying her carefully. She placed her hand on his arm, her touch light but filled with urgency. Her eyes narrowed as she tried to explain, pointing upward toward the skies where the warship floated like a predator. She spoke faster now, her voice sharp, almost desperate. The human wished he could understand, but then she lifted the broken pendant he had used against the beasts. She pressed it into his palm again, closing his fingers around it. Her glowing eyes locked onto his as if saying, "This is not only to save me, this is bigger than both of us." He studied the strange device, its faint light pulsing like a heartbeat. It was more than a trinket. He could feel it. Maybe it was a weapon, maybe a beacon, or maybe something even greater. The princess whispered one word several times, her voice trembling. "Ilaria, Ilaria." The human guessed it was her name. He pointed to himself and said softly, "Human." She blinked, then gave the faintest smile despite her pain, repeating, "Human," as if tasting the word for the first time. Their moment of fragile peace shattered when the sound of boots echoed in the cavern above. The soldiers had found the passage, their lights cutting into the darkness. The human stood quickly, helping the princess to her feet. She was weak, leaning against him, but her determination burned stronger now. She gestured toward a narrow tunnel deeper inside the cavern. He nodded and guided her through, their footsteps echoing as shouts grew closer behind them. The tunnel twisted and opened into a vast chamber, a place older than anything the human had ever seen. Pillars of crystal rose high into the air, carved with alien symbols that glowed faintly. The princess stopped, her eyes wide with recognition. She whispered reverently, touching the carvings with shaking hands. This was not just a hiding place. It was a sanctuary, perhaps sacred to her people. The human watched her carefully, feeling that he had stumbled into something far greater than a rescue. Suddenly, the pendant pulsed brighter, as if reacting to the walls around them. The princess raised it with trembling hands, speaking softly in her language. The carvings glowed stronger, the entire chamber humming with strange power. The human stepped back, awed as the crystals flared with light, casting their faces in brilliant color. She turned to him, her expression fierce despite her weakness. Her voice was clear this time, almost like the pendant itself carried meaning into his mind. "If I die, the galaxy burns." The human froze, stunned. For the first time he understood her, not fully, but enough. She was no ordinary princess. Her life was tied to something much larger. The betrayal that cast her from the ship was not just about power, it was about the fate of worlds. He clenched his fists, realizing the weight of his choice. Saving her had not only saved a life, it might have saved countless others. Above them, the soldiers' shouts grew louder. Their time was almost gone. The human grabbed her hand, pulling her toward another exit hidden between crystal pillars. She stumbled but followed, her eyes never leaving his. She knew now that he would not abandon her, not even against impossible odds. And he knew something even more powerful. Her survival was not just about kindness or duty. It was destiny. As they disappeared into the tunnels, the chamber dimmed once more. The glowing crystals faded slowly, like stars returning to slumber. But the echo of her words remained heavy in the human's mind. "If I die, the galaxy burns." And in that moment, he swore to himself that no matter what hunted them, no matter what tried to break them, he would keep her alive, even if the whole galaxy turned against him. The tunnels stretched like veins under the ancient city, twisting into endless darkness. The human carried a torch made from a broken crystal shard, its glow faint but steady. Beside him, the alien princess leaned on his arm, her steps unsteady but her gaze sharp. Every sound echoed around them, every drip of water, every whisper of shifting stone. And always behind them came the distant shouts and stomping boots of soldiers, closer and closer. The human pushed forward, his mind racing. He had fought battles before, he had been hunted before, but never like this. Now he carried not only his own life, but the fragile life of a princess who claimed the galaxy would burn if she died. He did not know if her words were prophecy or warning, but he knew they carried weight. The pendant in his pocket still pulsed faintly, its strange light warming his palm like a heartbeat. The princess tugged at his sleeve and pointed toward a split in the tunnel. Her voice whispered quick words, urgent and sharp. He could not understand, but he caught the tone. Go left, danger on the right. He trusted her instinct and guided them left, moving quickly through the narrowing passage. The air grew damp and cold, the walls glowing faintly with moss that shined like green fireflies. It was beautiful but dangerous, because beauty in this world was always a mask. A sudden screech echoed ahead. The human froze, pulling the princess behind him. From the darkness crawled another creature, larger than the beasts before, its body armored with black scales, its mouth full of jagged teeth. It hissed, its tail smashing against the wall with enough force to shatter stone. The princess gasped and clutched his arm, whispering Koresh, her word trembling with fear. The human raised a sharp piece of broken metal he had carried from the ruins, his only weapon. The creature lunged, and the human met it head-on. The fight was brutal. The human ducked and rolled, the beast's claws slicing sparks from stone. He slashed at its underbelly, his blade barely scratching its hide. It roared and struck again, its tail whipping past his head. The princess cried out, raising the pendant, its glow flaring brighter than before. The creature reeled, screeching as the light seared its eyes. The human seized the moment, driving his blade into the creature's mouth, twisting with all his strength. With a final roar it collapsed, its body shaking before falling still. Breathing hard, the human leaned against the wall, blood on his hands. The princess knelt beside him, touching his arm with trembling fingers. She whispered again, her voice softer this time, not fear but gratitude. Her eyes met his, shining with something new, respect, maybe even trust. She was beginning to see that this human was more than an accidental savior. He was a shield, a warrior willing to stand where her own guards had failed. But there was no time to rest. The soldiers' voices grew louder behind them, echoing through the tunnels. The human lifted her again, guiding her through a crack in the wall into another cavern. This chamber opened wide, revealing a bridge of stone across a deep chasm. Beneath them glowed rivers of molten light, like the planet's heart exposed. Crossing it was the only way forward, but danger followed close behind. As they stepped onto the bridge, the princess stumbled, her strength fading. The human steadied her, whispering words she could not understand but felt in her heart. Stay with me. Don't give up. I will carry you if I must. She nodded weakly, pressing her hand against his chest as if to say she trusted him. Behind them soldiers appeared, their rifles glowing, their voices shouting. The bridge shook with their steps as they charged. The human ran, pulling the princess forward, his feet pounding the stone. Beams of blue light shot past them, striking the walls and sending shards of rock into the air. The princess lifted the pendant again, its glow bursting like a flare, blinding the soldiers long enough for them to reach the other side. But just as they stepped onto solid ground, the bridge cracked and began to crumble into the fire below. The human turned, watching as half the soldiers fell screaming into the molten river. Still others leapt back to safety, their fury echoing through the cavern. The human pulled the princess into a hidden tunnel, his heart racing. They moved deeper into the earth, leaving the soldiers shouting behind. The path grew narrow, lit only by the faint glow of the pendant. The princess touched his hand, whispering again, Human, her voice soft but firm. Her eyes held more than gratitude now, they held belief. For the first time in her life, she believed someone not of her people could protect her. For the first time she believed survival was possible. And in that moment, the human realized something too. He was no longer just saving her life. He was standing against an empire, against fate itself. And he would not stop, not until she was safe. Even if the galaxy itself hunted them, the tunnels twisted into silence again. Only the soft glow of the pendant guided their path. The human walked with steady steps though his body ached from battle. His arms supported the alien princess, whose breath grew heavier with every passing moment. They had survived the beasts, the bridge, and the soldiers, Yet danger was not behind them. It walked beside them in shadows, waiting for the right moment. The cavern opened into a vast chamber filled with broken statues and shattered thrones carved from crystal. The princess froze, her eyes widening in recognition. She whispered in her language, her voice trembling with something between sorrow and anger. This place was once a royal refuge, a sanctuary of her ancestors, now ruined and abandoned. The human watched her step forward, her hand brushing a broken crown carved into the wall. He did not understand her words, but felt the pain in her tone. This place reminded her of everything she had lost. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the far side of the chamber. The human raised his weapon, eyes narrowing. From the shadows stepped a figure cloaked in silver armor, his face sharp, his eyes glowing with cold fire. The princess gasped, whispering his name. The human could not understand the word, but he saw the recognition in her eyes. This was no enemy soldier. This was one of her own, a knight once sworn to protect her. The knight bowed low, his voice soft and smooth. "My princess, you are alive," he said in a language the human could not understand, but the tone was gentle, respectful, almost too perfect. The princess took a step forward, relief flooding her features. The human frowned, his instincts burning. Something was wrong. The knight's gaze shifted to the human, sharp and cold. He spoke again, this time in a tongue the human understood through a strange translation device at his throat. "You, human, release her. You do not belong here." The human tightened his grip on the princess's arm, stepping slightly in front of her. "She lives because I caught her. I will not abandon her now," he replied firmly. The knight's lips curled into a smile that did not reach his eyes. "You are bold, but foolish. She is not meant for you. She is not meant for any human." The princess raised her hand, speaking quickly, her voice sharp and urgent. She begged the knight to stand down, but his eyes betrayed him. The human saw the flicker of greed, the shadow of ambition. This was not a savior come to rescue her. This was a traitor. The knight stepped closer, his weapon drawn, its blade humming with blue energy. She must not live to claim the throne. Her fall was no accident. It was justice, he hissed. The princess gasped, her body trembling. Betrayal cut deeper than any blade. This man had sworn loyalty to her family, yet he had joined those who cast her from the skies. The human stepped forward, his own weapon raised, though it was only a broken shard of metal. The knight laughed coldly. "You would fight me, human, with that scrap." But his laughter ended when the human lunged, their weapons clashing with sparks. The fight was brutal in the ruined chamber, stone shattering with every strike. The knight was stronger, faster, armed with advanced technology. Yet the human was relentless, every move driven by will, every strike by the memory of catching her fall. The princess cried out, torn between fear and hope. She clutched the pendant, whispering words into its light, praying it would answer her again. The stone walls trembled as if the chamber itself heard her plea. The knight struck the human down, his blade grazing across his side, leaving a burning wound. The human staggered but did not fall. He pushed back, his eyes blazing with defiance. "You betrayed her, but you will not take her," he growled. With a sudden burst of strength, he drove his shard into the knight's shoulder, twisting until sparks burst from the armor. The knight roared, striking him away, but the human stood again, blood dripping, breath ragged, refusing to yield. The princess ran forward, standing between them, her pendant glowing like a star. Her voice thundered through the cavern, no longer weak, no longer broken. She declared her right to live, her right to rule, her right to choose who stood at her side. The knight froze, his blade trembling as the pendant's light burned against his skin. For a moment he wavered, but his hatred did not vanish. "You will regret this, princess, you and your human both." He spat before retreating into the shadows, vanishing into the tunnels. The human collapsed to one knee, blood staining the stone. The princess rushed to him, pressing her hands to his wound, tears in her glowing eyes. She whispered his name softly, "Human," as if it were a vow. He looked at her with pain in his eyes, but also fire. He had stood against betrayal and survived. He had proven that. Loyalty was not born of blood or crown, but of choice. And his choice was clear. He would not let her die, not to soldiers, Not to beasts, not to traitors, not to anyone. The cavern shook with every echo of the knight's retreating footsteps. The human leaned heavily against the broken throne, blood running from his side, his vision blurred, but his will unbroken. Beside him, the alien princess pressed her glowing hands against his wound, whispering words in her language, her voice trembling but steady with determination. The pendant pulsed with her touch, sending warmth into his flesh, easing his pain, though the wound still burned. Her eyes glowed brighter, filled with both fear and fire. She knew the knight would return, and not alone. The human forced himself to stand, gripping his shard of metal tighter. His body screamed in pain, but his spirit was steel. He had stood against betrayal. He had caught a falling life. He would not stop now. The princess tried to push him back down, shaking her head, but he only smiled weakly. "If I fall, you fall. If you live, I live," he whispered, though she could not understand. Still, she felt the meaning in her heart. Their moment of quiet ended when the chamber roared with approaching engines. The ceiling cracked as dropships descended, shaking the ruins with their weight. From the broken roof poured armored soldiers, their rifles glowing like blue fire. At their front stood the Silver Knight, his armor scarred but his eyes blazing with hate. He raised his blade high, shouting for the soldiers to capture the princess and kill the human. The cavern filled with the thunder of boots, the hiss of weapons charging, the promise of death. The human stepped forward, standing tall despite his wound. He gripped his weapon with both hands, ready to fight though he was only one man against many. The soldiers laughed, voices sharp through their helmets. "Just a human, he will fall in seconds," they sneered. But the knight's smile faltered, because he had seen the fire in this man's eyes. He knew this human would not break easily. The first wave of soldiers charged, rifles flashing. The human rolled aside, his shard striking one soldier's visor, shattering it in sparks. He moved like a storm, dodging, striking, every blow filled with desperate strength. He knew he could not win by power, so he fought with cunning, using the ruins as cover, pulling down broken pillars, forcing soldiers into narrow paths. One by one they fell, but more replaced them, wave after wave crashing against his stand. The princess raised the pendant high, her voice calling out in words older than her world. The crystals in the cavern walls answered, glowing brighter, humming with deep energy. The air shook, dust swirling as beams of light shot from the walls, striking soldiers and tearing their weapons apart. The human glanced back, eyes wide. She was not only a princess, she was a key to ancient power. The pendant was more than a relic. It was the heart of her people, and through her voice it awakened. The knight roared in fury, cutting through the storm of light, his blade humming with deadly force. He lunged at the human, their weapons clashing in a spray of sparks. The human staggered but pushed back, his shard glowing faintly now, feeding on the same energy that poured through the cavern. Every strike rattled his bones, yet he refused to yield. "You should have let her die," the knight hissed. "She lives because of me, and she will keep living." The human growled back. The battle raged like thunder. The princess stood between them, her pendant blazing, her eyes fierce. She shouted one word again and again, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Live, live, live." The crystals pulsed to her cry, the ground trembling as if the planet itself rose to defend her. The human felt strength flood into him, his wounds aching but no longer slowing him. With a roar he struck, driving his shard deep into the knight's chest. The traitor screamed, sparks bursting from his armor as he fell to the ground. The remaining soldiers froze, fear breaking through their discipline. Some dropped their weapons and fled, others hesitated, staring at the human standing tall beside their glowing princess. She raised her hand, the pendant shining like a star. Her voice rang out with command, with power, with truth. "I am not dead, I live, and this human stands with me." Even though the human did not understand her words, he knew the galaxy would hear them one day. The last of the soldiers retreated, their dropships roaring back into the skies. Silence fell heavy over the chamber, broken only by the sound of the human's ragged breath. He sank to his knees, exhausted but alive. The princess knelt beside him, pressing her forehead gently to his, her voice soft. "Human," she whispered again, But now it was not only his name. It was a vow, a bond, a promise. He closed his eyes, holding her hand, knowing the fight was not over. But in this moment, they had stood together. And the galaxy had witnessed it. The ruins were silent after the battle. Smoke drifted through the broken chamber, the glow of the pendant still burning softly like a fading star. The human knelt on the cracked stone, his body torn and weary, yet his spirit unshaken. Beside him the alien princess held his hand tightly, her glowing eyes watching him with something deeper than gratitude, something the galaxy had never expected to see between a princess and a human. Outside, the sky still burned with the light of warships, but none dared descend again. The soldiers had seen the truth, the night had fallen, and the human had stood where no one else dared. The princess rose slowly, her voice strong now, filled with command. She lifted the pendant and spoke into the night. Her words echoed through the ruins, carried by the strange energy of the crystals. I live, the throne still breathes, and this human is my witness. The villagers who had once fled began to return, their eyes wide with awe. They saw the princess alive, standing tall, and the human beside her. Whispers filled the air like wind through trees. He saved her, a human caught her, he fought for her, he bled for her. Fear turned to reverence, and reverence turned to hope. The human said nothing, his chest rising and falling with tired breaths. He had not done it for glory, he had not done it for songs. He had done it because letting her fall had never been an option. Yet the galaxy was already weaving the story into legend. The tale of a fragile human who caught a princess cast from the stars, a tale that no army could silence. The princess knelt before him, placing her forehead gently to his, her hand pressed against his heart. "Human," she whispered again. But now the word carried weight, not just a name but a vow. Her voice trembled, but her eyes shone bright. She was declaring before all who watched that he was no outsider, no stranger, but her savior, her ally, her chosen protector. The villagers knelt as well, bowing to both of them. Even in their fear, they knew history was being written before their eyes. When the warships pulled back into the skies, the stars cleared, and silence claimed the night again. The human stood, weak but steady. He looked to the horizon, knowing this was only the beginning. For saving her had not ended the war, it had only begun a greater one. The enemies who betrayed her would return, stronger and more furious. But so too would her people rise, fueled by the legend of a human who defied the impossible. Days later, word spread across systems, carried by traders, smugglers, and whispers in alien markets. They spoke of the princess who survived, and the human who caught her fall. Songs were sung in low voices around campfires. Paintings of the moment appeared on walls of cities. And even in places where humans were treated as nothing, children whispered the story with shining eyes. The galaxy had not only seen a rescue, it had seen a bond that shattered pride, race, and power. The human and the princess walked together through the ruins of her ancestors, rebuilding piece by piece. He carried no crown, no title, but his presence alone was enough to turn fear into strength. She guided her people with a new fire, no longer just a princess bound by blood, but a leader forged by survival. At her side was the one who had caught her, and the galaxy would never let that memory fade. In the quiet moments, when the stars glowed above, she would sometimes sit beside him and whisper the same words she spoke the night he saved her. "If I die, the galaxy burns," she had said. Now she whispered instead, "Because of you, I live, and so does the galaxy." He would smile faintly, his scars deep, but his resolve deeper. He knew the future was uncertain, but he knew one thing was certain. As long as she breathed, as long as hope remained, humanity had carved its place into the stars. And so the legend spread, told again and again. The alien princess thrown from the heavens, the human who caught her before she struck the earth. The story of one impossible act that shook empires and rewrote destiny. The story the galaxy would never forget.